Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining me and my very special guest. She is a renowned and celebrated actress, singer, writer, producer, recording artist, and mom. I have known her since she was 10 years old when she created the role of Tina Denmark in the musical Ruthless. She is also known from such musicals as Hairspray, Legally Blonde, Wicked, and from the hit television shows How I Met Your Mother, Anger Management, and Heart of Dixie, and from the blockbuster films Jumanji and Dreamgirls. And now she has released 3 incredible singles from her brand new, critically acclaimed album called Women of Tomorrow. Please say hello to my friend, Laura Bell Bundy.
Hi, how are you?
I have known you since you were 10 years old.
I know.
And that was only yesterday. You look so great. You look sensational. First of all, how are you and where are you?
Well, I'm doing great. I just made the move from LA to a farm about an hour outside of New York City in Tewksbury, New Jersey.
That is great. So how are you and the family doing? You're a new mom. I mean, what's happening there on the farm?
Well, I am a new mom. I have a 21-month-old. So he's a toddler. He'll be 2 in May. And we have sheep on the farm. And today, my husband went out to clean their area, and there's a ram as well. And the ram went at him. So we had to deal with that today. But the female sheep are very, very sweet, and they're Dorset sheep. So anyway, that is my life. It's very strange. But I think this last year, made my husband and I reassess what we really wanted in life and where we wanted to be. And he's from New Jersey, and his family is in New Jersey, and my family is from Kentucky, and it's very close by. And I wanted that big piece of land that felt like Kentucky, and that's what we got an hour away from New York City. So this has been quite a journey. I've moved twice in a year, but doing well.
Because I've spoken to so many stars all during the pandemic, and so many people have uprooted and said, let's change our life. Mm-hmm. Or, we have the time to do this. I thought I wanted this. Now we really want this. And I think it's so wonderful how everyone has, just thought these things through and have moved with clean air and land and just reevaluated and reassessed what they want out of life.
Right. We used to live where we lived based on convenience.
Yeah.
And now we've been living this year where everything is virtual. Yeah. And so we can be anywhere for that. So we can live where we want to live, where our heart desires for us to live. And we can do what we do from the comfort of our own home. Now, not everything, right? Like I can't exactly go do a concert or go do a musical. No. I have a barn. I'm thinking about putting on Broadway in the barn, or cowboy boots to curtain calls. Who knows? But I can't, one of the reasons that I got closer to the New York area is so that when that's going again, I can do it. Whereas I would have had to uproot my family from LA and the whole thing. And so that was always a big question mark for us.
Well, we're thrilled you're closer to New York now. This is great because we lost you for a while. Now that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, have the days gotten a little easier for you? Do you still have good days, bad days? What's life like now?
You mean with the quarantine and the pandemic? Yeah, I'm feeling okay. So I've started to get really used to not putting pants on. I mean, I have the top on right now, but I'm in sweats, let's be honest. Okay. And so I've gotten used to comfortable pants. I've gotten used to not spending an hour in the car to get where I wanted to go. And so there's some things about that I'm like, oh no, not yet. Oh no, not yet. I still kind of want to be home. And then there's this part of me that's also oh my God, I just want to perform again. I just want to feel that. And the couple times that I've performed this year, whether it was doing a music video, I did 2 different ones. One, I was like, I'm dancing and it hasn't come out yet. And the other was this like funny little musical Iceman that I did for the Pasadena Playhouse. I was in the middle of those days going, oh, this is who I am. This is what it feels like to be me. I'm so happy. And so I do think that there's like this like slight little teeny bit of a dark cloud that's over all of us that needs expression, that sense of expression. Like any anger I have is pent up right now. Any sadness I have is pent up. Any joy I have is unexpressed in a way around other people in social gatherings. Right. I need that. And that I'm really excited to have. So I am, I think we all have quarantine fatigue right now. We're like, whatever, I'll go anyway. You know, I mean, we kind of feel like that right now. So I'm getting to that point where I have that. But I also think I'm going to be reevaluating the rat race that I was running before.
It's just going to be a new rat race. You're going to look at it in a totally different way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
like, I don't have to come there.
Totally.
No, I don't.
Totally. We congratulate you on the new album. It is sensational. Women of Tomorrow. How did this all come about? And what inspired you to make this album?
Well, I'll be honest. What inspired me was the 2016 election. And I think that also inspired this entire women's movement that preceded, and the Women's March that we now do every year in January, except for this year because of the pandemic. But I think that women had this feeling overall that like, oh no, there's rights we could lose. There are things we have to fight for, and this feels like they might be at risk. And so that led me to do this concert called Double Standards, which was at the Town Hall in 2017, where Broadway stars, female Broadway stars came together to sing duets on jazz standards, all in the name of women's rights and women's health. And we raised over $100,000 for ACLU, Planned Parenthood, and the National Breast Cancer Coalition. And all of those are connected to each other in other ways, right? Yep. Whether you're getting your mammogram from Planned Parenthood, so that's helping early prevention for National Breast Cancer Coalition, and the ACLU was fighting for Planned Parenthood to get funding, and et cetera, et cetera. And so, so it was an amazing event, you know. And after that, I wanted to make an album, a Double Standards album. Well, originally thought I was just going to have these women come in and sing their songs and just record them, which I still should probably do. And because I'm a songwriter, I started to write original music and have ideas for original music that sounded kind of like that old style standard, but had modern lyrics that each song delved into the different issues that women were facing today.
Yeah. And
one of the things that I learned from doing that event, which was very inspiring to me, is we were writing the sort of patter, right? The in between for the songs, the intros and all that stuff. And we were like sliding in little bits of women's history and different facts about women. And like it wasn't until 1974 that a woman could open up a credit card or take out a loan without the permission of her husband or father. And I was blown away by this fact. I couldn't believe that I didn't know this. And I thought, holy crap. And so I started to research, like, okay, who fought for that? Well, that was Lindy Boggs. Okay. So and so I started to investigate women's history, and I started to investigate these different rights that we have had to fight for, including birth control. And birth control was illegal. Literally using any form of birth control or advertising any form of birth control was illegal in the early 1900s. And you could be put away for 20 years like Margaret Sanger was. Or, well, they tried, but it didn't happen. She escaped to Europe. But so there were all these things that I was learning. And I decided that this album was going to be bringing up those issues, but in an educational way, but also in a musical way, so that you don't realize that you're eating your vegetables. and in a personal way, because while we might say, oh yeah, this album has a political slant because I'm talking about equal pay, or I'm talking about the mental load of motherhood, or I'm talking about women over apologizing, and on and on and on. These are actually all personal things for women. And they're personal to me because I am a woman. So, you know.
The songs are so entertaining, so moving. We're going to get into the videos, which I learned so much from, besides being entertained. But talk about working with Shea Carter and Jeremy Adelman.
Edelman, yes.
Edelman on the album. Like, these are your music producers and producers. Wow, and co-writers.
Yeah. So the three of us wrote everything except for Girls Just Want to Have Fun.
Yeah.
And we produced everything together as a collective. And Jeremy and I became friends because he arranged, produced, and wrote all the music for Heart of Dixie, which is a TV show that I did. And from there, we became friends, and we began to do all kinds of different things together. He wrote an original song for the Double Standards concert, actually. It was like My Pussy Belongs to Me or something. With Lila Gearstein, who wrote Heart of Dixie. So, but Jeremy just has that knack for that style and that incredible orchestral type of arranging. And he's a musical genius. I mean, he really is. And initially it was just he and I with this sort of idea to do this album. And then Shea Carter was a great friend of mine and a songwriter friend of mine, but we had never written together. And I told her I was doing this album. And the one thing I'll say about her is she's always like, anytime she came to my house or we were hanging out, I always learned something from her.
Yeah.
He was like always up into one issue, you know, whether it be eating right or what the cows are doing to the environment or whatever. I mean, I was always learning something from her. And when it came to women's rights and equality, we would have these very long, in-depth conversations that got almost like spiritual and fairly personal. And so I was like, I feel like maybe we should kind of try to write a song together. And the first song we wrote off the album has not come out yet. It's called Digital Disease, and it's about our obsession with social media. And it was like the easiest, most amazing, fun song I've written with anyone. And I was like, okay, let's write another. So we wrote another, and then I was like, okay, that's it. We're just writing this album together. And she's a lyrical genius, and it's just poetry. And it's funny, we started this album, I was pregnant.
Yeah.
And then I had my son, and then we finished the rest of the album. And it was like a completely different experience going from non-child to child, or pregnant to now recovering. And for her, she lived in LA for the first half of it, and for the back half of it, she lived in New York. So I would get like, she'd have ideas for songs or lyrics or whatever, and she'd be taking pictures of receipts while she was sitting on the subway. And it was just the funnest, most interesting collaboration. But really, we all sort of provide a different element. For Shea, she's like the mastermind of words and ideas, but she can go off into, the rabbit hole, down the rabbit hole. And I'm like come on, let's get out of the rabbit hole. I think that one was a good line. And you said something about like 1 minute ago about whatever. And I'm almost like organizing it, you know? And then Jeremy will like be playing something. I'm like, I think I hear a melody there, you know? So I was in a way like a very, very much like the editor of ideas, and then taking all of those things and putting them into a cohesive form, and then giving those to Jeremy. And then, you know, it was just a very interesting way.
I love this collaboration, because all collaborations are different, but I love this one. I think this is so great. So the album was recorded before the pandemic, right?
Yes, it was. It was finished, and I was planning on putting it out.
Yeah.
And I mean, literally, I was going to be putting out my first song last year, March 31st.
Wow.
And I had this feeling like, I was like, I don't feel ready yet. I pulled it. The quarantine happened. And I was like, oh my God, thank God I did that. And And then it gave me more time to kind of rethink what the timing was going to be. And I decided to release it at the 100-year anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment. And that felt right. Not that whole album, but Get It Girl, You Go.
Well, I think you're really smart the way you did that, because you've released 3 incredible videos. Now, I know these were made during the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about the first one from the album, Get It Girl, You Go. I mean, that is crazy. I mean, you have Shoshana Bean, you have Anika Nana Rose. I mean, how incredible is that? And then the other women who sing behind you.
Oh, yeah. So this was a very collaborative effort among my friends and comrades of the stage and theater and TV. And I essentially, first of all, I'll talk about Shoshana and Anika in being incredible collaborators and game for anything. And Shoshana had recorded all of her vocals before the pandemic. Anika was right on the edge. Yeah. And so some of like our recording had to happen in this bizarre sort of virtual way where we sent a mic to her and she did. And then we had to film the video. And I had this whole idea of the video where I was going to have us, the three of us, go through the decades together, the last 100 years. Well, that went out the window because we couldn't do that. So I was like, okay, we're going to shoot it on a green screen. I ordered a pop-up green screen from Amazon. I sang in front. I did all the moves. Shea and I figured out what the moves were going to be, because Shea not only is the songwriter and producer of the album, she also helps me conceptualize the music videos.
And a choreographer and everything else.
And everything. And so we did these moves. We taped ourselves doing them, sent those to the women. I recorded my part. Then they recorded their parts, and the editor put it together and made it look as if we were together. Wow. But we were not together. And then, because the song is about celebrating how far we've come as women and also about sisterhood. Yeah. The song is really about supporting other women and holding up the ladder so other women can climb. And I thought, how great to bring my other sister performers into this. And they also believe in this message. So they all sing lines in their home. Brittany Snow was hilarious. She was sweeping the floor and doing her hair. And I said, just do the activities that you feel like you have to do as women. So that's why Brittany was like, well, I have to get my hair done, and I have to sweep the floor, and I have to do this. So it was very funny what I was getting back. Kate Rockwell was cutting vegetables in the kitchen with a massive knife. I mean, you really had but it was amazing, to have these other Broadway broads, join me in this effort. And we were also celebrating, women's right to vote. Now, granted, it was white women's right to vote 100 years ago, and women of color did not get the right to vote until 1965. We often forget that when we celebrate this holiday. It was a bittersweet one, but we still do have to celebrate the fact that women did get the right to vote. So we show through history the suffragettes, we show the civil rights movement, we show the women's movement of the 70s, and we show how far we've come as a gender in the music video with footage of those things.
It's terrific. Like I said, it's so entertaining, yet I learned so much just from watching.
Thank you. The other thing I totally forgot is we also featured all the female candidates running for office in 2020.
Oh, yeah. So beautifully done, that one. Then the second single and video was Girls Just Want to Have Fun. Now, everybody, when I first heard you were doing this, oh my gosh, I love Cindy's upbeat message to this. Then I heard your single and watched the video. I mean, talk about your brilliant director. Is it Ariel Zucker?
Ariel Zucker, yes.
Oh my gosh, that is explain your concept for this version of the song and the video.
So, we knew we wanted to address the issue of domestic violence because 1 in 4 women experience it in their lifetime. Yeah. To this day, and violence towards women has sort of been throughout the centuries sort of like poo-pooed as just like, you know, she's his problem.
Yeah.
And, you know, the husband will deal with her, or, you know, like, get your woman under control. And so that sort of pervasive attitude has been very detrimental to women. And the majority of women who experience homelessness in this country have do because of domestic violence, because they have nowhere else to go. And so we wanted to talk about this issue. It was just an interesting issue to tackle as an original song. And one day I was driving around and I was in my car and I heard Girls Just Want to Have Fun. And I was like, ooh, if we took this down and we made this a ballad, this could really be amazing. And so I actually looked at the lyrics. And then there was the lyric, some boys take a beautiful girl and hide her away from the rest of the world. I want to be the one that walks in the sun. Oh, girls just want to have fun. And I was like, ooh. I was like, that really hit me, like in a real emotional way.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, we have to do this. So when I brought it to Jeremy, he was like, what if it sounds like a waltz? And I was like, ooh, even like more haunting. Yeah. And so we started with piano, just singing, and then we began to add the strings around it and build it, because we wanted it to feel like she was free at the end. And that kind of coincides with the vision for the music video. Yeah. So I talked to Ariel, and Ariel and I had worked together on this little project called Womandemic that I'm doing. And we had worked together on Get It Girl You Go. And I had told her I really am looking for a director for this particular video. And she said, well, this really interests me because I'm a survivor of domestic violence. And so I said, great, like, this is yours, because I want to make sure that this is authentic, and that we're responsible in how that we tell this story of this woman who begins a relationship that becomes abusive and then goes from being a victim to a survivor. Yeah. And so we discussed it. We had, we were definitely talking about the different ideas and how we wanted to do it. And now, since we were in the pandemic, the way to do this was through green screen and animation. So we filmed me. I had a camera strapped to me. So I went through a like standing, sitting, lying down, sitting up, standing, like this whole sort of choreography. So the video was essentially done in one take, two different shots, but one take this way, standing up, sitting down, and then another overhead shot. And then we had this amazing animator, Claire Chin, work with Ariel to figure out, what does that room look like? We had to kind of do it simultaneously to know what the room would look like before we filmed it. And then we had to like build the world around it in animation.
Brilliantly done. Like I said, you know, these are entertaining videos, yet they're enlightening at the very same time. And, you know, domestic violence, especially during the pandemic and the lockdown and the shutdown, there's been so much of that. So everything you've done is just so timely of how you release these. And the third single, which just got released, is another stunning video, American Girl. I'm obsessed with these pictures too that your photographer took.
Oh, well, the stills from the video. Oh, thank you.
I mean, this is like a mini Mad Men movie. I mean, this is so beautiful. Where did you film that? I
was so fortunate. I have two friends who have a house in Palm Springs.
Okay.
And it's actually a very well-known house. It's called, if you go online and you write #ThatPinkDoor, you'll see the front of this house. It's this famous house with this pink door, and everybody goes over and takes a picture of it of themselves in front of it on Instagram. And actually, the inside is even more fantastic, is what they don't realize. And so I knew what I wanted this video to be. And actually, Shea and I had mapped it out because we knew someone else who had a place in Palm Springs, and we thought, well, maybe we could do it like that. And it's very sort of like that 50s, 60s, mid-century kind of vibe, because that was very Palm Springs-esque.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the sound. But also we're dealing with like those sort of those ideas, those sort of traditional ideas about women in the 50s and 60s and how they've sort of seeped into our collective consciousness. So we wanted to shoot it there. And then I asked Sean if his house was available, and he was like, yeah, I'll let you do it there. And I was like, oh, this is like a house that.
Oh yeah.
I was very lucky. We had a crew of 6 people. It was a very small, it took 2 days to shoot it. But we.
Oh, the wardrobe, the wigs. I mean, everything. It's just so beautifully done, but it shows you those women, the Donna Reed show, and all these women who vacuumed in high heels and all this stuff and cooked in the kitchen. It's so brilliant. And all your videos are so different. I mean, the looks of them are just so great. So I want to congratulate you first for doing all of them and the way you've done them during this pandemic too. It's
not been easy. It's not been easy, but there's, it has been fun. And I think it's been a good outlet for me that if I didn't have this project and these videos to work on, I've actually been quite busy during the pandemic. Like I still would have had to make these music videos. I just had to make them in a slightly different way. And I think for American Girl, there might have been more people in it, but what ended up happening is that I played different versions of me.
Yeah. And
so you just sort of kind of go from looking at your weakness and making it your strength in those moments. That's what creativity is all about. You have a problem and then you have to figure out how to deal with that problem equals creativity.
I just love your glass is always half full. It always has been since I've known you. I mean, mine is. Well, no, now it's empty, but the point is we can always fill it halfway. But you've always had that, and I think a lot of artists have had that. They found a way to create during this pandemic. But as a performer, you never knew where your jobs were coming from or where you were going to be performing or anyway. So you're like, oh, I'll do this now. We'll get this house. I'll bring in a crew of 6, and we'll just create this little video, or it's really big video, under this sort of, shutdown or whatever. But you found a way to be really creative during this.
I've tried. I think, you said something that's interesting. As actors, we never know when our next job is.
Yeah.
And we're sort of, we're always sort of waiting for that.
Yeah.
I don't like that type of life. So I have always had a side hustle that ends up becoming my main hustle.
Yeah.
So when I am, sort of in between the big acting jobs, I'm throwing myself into the creating of music and content and television shows and things like that. And I think it makes me feel like my value is not in someone else deciding if I'm worthy.
Yeah.
And it's about me truly being creative, because that's why I act too. I just like to tell stories with music. I don't care whether that's on stage or writing songs or directing a music video or whatever that is. Writing a script or musical. I love doing that. And so I just do that, whether I'm hired and paid to do it or whether I'm paying to do it.
So you also, but you're always creating, and that's I think the major thing during all of this. You also have your podcast too, Women of Tomorrow, which deals with some really wonderful issues. I mean, what did you want to achieve with the podcast?
So the podcast is a companion piece of the album. So every song on the album deals with a different issue women are facing, and then when we go into the podcast, we play that song, we talk about what the song is about, and maybe some of the backstory around us writing it. Then we talk about the history of that issue. And then we invite a guest on that's an expert in the field to talk more at length about that issue and how it affects us today and how we can move forward. So for Get It Girl You Go, we obviously the song is about breaking the glass ceiling and women getting a seat at the table and women in politics and celebrating how far we've come in the last 100 years. So for the history, we went through and talked about how far we've come in the last 100 years and some important events for people to know about and when those became legal for women. Because really, we didn't have any rights until like 1848 when women had the right to own property or to make to earn a wage that they got to keep, that they didn't have to give to their husband. It was 1848 when that began. It wasn't really until the early 1900s where that was a law. They also did not get custody of their children. So if their husband were to die, the children would go to a male relative and not to them.
Wow.
Yeah, which is crazy. These are things that a lot of people don't know. So I really wanted to give people the history while also entertaining them with the music. And then we had Amy McGrath on, and Amy was running against Mitch McConnell for Senate. And she was also the very first Marine fighter jet pilot who flew an FA-18 in a combat mission. And so she broke the glass ceiling. So we talked to her about breaking the glass ceiling in the military and what that was like for her and what she dreamed about as a young girl. And then how and why she's gone into politics. And it was a really, it was a very complete, the podcast it's a pretty complete piece.
Yeah.
There's some additional episodes that we do that don't necessarily have to do with the album itself, but just have to do with women. So for Black History Month, we highlighted a number of Black women throughout the last 100 or so. Well, actually, we went back further. But we highlighted Black women who used their artistry as activism.
Love it.
And who changed the collective consciousness through their music or their poetry.
Where can people find the podcast?
It's on the Broadway Podcast Network.
Perfect. It's really sensational.
Everywhere. If you could go on Apple or Spotify or wherever you watch a podcast and just put in Women of Tomorrow and it'll come up.
I love it. I want to go back to the beginning for a second, because growing up, where did your love for the theater and the arts begin? And what were your earliest creative outlets? And how did the Town and Village School of Dance in Paris, Kentucky play into that?
Well, I started dancing at the Town and Village School of Dance in Paris, Kentucky, which is in Bourbon County, which is ironically a dry county. When I was 2.5.
Wow.
And in fact, I have a stage mother. Like if you just imagine Mama Rose meets Dolly Parton, that's my mom. And my mom was like, well, I know you don't take students until they're 3, but she is very coordinated and she's 2.5 and she can do anything a 3-year-old can do. Now that comes up again. Okay. So I was at the Town and Village School of Dance and I was dancing there. Now, at one point, my grandfather was a singer and he was a radio DJ in Maysville, Kentucky. He trained Nick Clooney, who is George Clooney's father, and Rosemary Clooney's brother in radio. And Rosemary Clooney was also from Maysville.
Yeah.
And they all kind of came up together. My grandfather sang too, and they went to Cincinnati together. And eventually my grandfather went to Lexington, Kentucky, where he left radio and became an on-air broadcaster. And so we always had music. He sounded like Bing Crosby. So I heard that growing up. And my aunt was Miss Kentucky and semifinalist of Miss America and taught herself how to play the piano. And she was musical. So I always heard music. My mom always had music on. So some point during my dance lessons, I began singing all the songs. So like while the other little girls were doing, shuffle, step, I was like, I'm a Yankee Doodle. I was singing out loud, like really loud. And so my dance teacher told my mom, she's singing a lot in the class, like kind of maybe slightly disturbing the class. And I think you should maybe, put her in singing lessons. I was taking piano around 4. I did Suzuki. And everything for me was about the ear. I could not read, but I memorized well because of what I listened to. So I would memorize all the words of the songs, everything like that. And my mom began to put me in like with a singing teacher at like 5. And when I was 5, I did a pageant, a local pageant, and I won. And then I went to the state level and I won. And then I went to the national level and I won a new car.
Oh, are you serious?
Yes. I won a new car and I was Miss Pee Wee Hemisphere. Okay. This story is crazy, but this is how I got started in the business. And this is also my love for the theater. Now, I was 5. I think maybe I'd also been doing the Nutcracker, like I played a mouse. So that was also, I was coming up in the local of the theater and everything. And so after winning this pageant, we got asked if we would be up for going to New York City, all expenses paid, to be on the Phil Donahue show. And my mom was like, oh my God, an all expense paid trip to New York. We've got to go to get Kmart and get some new clothes. And so we went on this show and I had like a new dress and I walked the runway. There's a bunch of other kids and moms. And turns out this was not a celebration of children's pageants. It was an expose. And they brought a child psychologist in. The audience turned on it like, I can't believe you're doing this to your daughter. Like she's a wind-up toy, blah, blah, blah. You know, and I actually have a video where I tried to defend myself and grabbed Phil Donahue's mic.
Yeah.
And I was ballsy. And I looked like John Bonet. I always say, like, I am a gay man trapped in the body of John Bonet. And so this didn't go well. And afterwards, my mom was like, I can't believe that. You know, and we got out on the street and she's like, well, if we're in New York City, we just got to we got to shine this turd. And so she walked my little Tookus all the way to 59th Street and First Avenue, which was quite a walk. And I don't think we knew much about the crosstown bus.
Yeah.
And so and I remember it being gray and rainy. And it was March. And like New York City in March. It could be warm, it could be cold, but it's always gray.
Yeah.
And we got to Ford Modeling Agency, and my mom said, we're here to make the children's division. And this guy at the front was like, you need an appointment? And she's like, well, this is Miss Pee Wee Hemisphere, and we are only here until tomorrow. So if they're going to meet her, they're going to need to meet her now.
Oh. I love this.
Let us up. And I mean up like 5 flights of steps, no elevator. I'm sure that's how they kept the models skinny. Yeah. And for a 5-year-old going up those steps, 5 flights, that was like, I was exhausted by the time. I was like, by the time we got to the top. And I remember meeting them and talking to them and walking around and them like asking me to stand front, stand to the side. Blah, blah, blah. And they gave us a contract on the spot. I say us, it was me. But it was a 5-year contract. And we lived in Kentucky. So my mom was like, but we live in Kentucky. My husband and I have a business there. And they said, well, don't worry. There's this thing called summer kids. It's the kids that just come for the summers when school is out and their mom can get away. And she goes, well, I can do it. Of course, she had not discussed any of this with my father. And we, that night, after my mom was like, celebration, let's go have cheesecake at Lindy's. We went to the Palace Theater, and my mom was like, I need the cheapest ticket you've got, but the best ticket. And they're looking at me like a little, and we went to see Starlight Express. And that was my very first musical. And that trip was the beginning of everything. That crazy trip of Phil Donahue and Ford Modeling Agency was when I saw my very first Broadway show, and I began my real love of doing theater. And that began, like, modeling was really boring.
Yeah.
But what happened is every summer when I came to New York, I would study with a singing teacher. I studied with a guy named Gene McLaughlin, who unfortunately passed away from AIDS. When I was about 12. That was very difficult. But I studied with him every year when I came up. And then I would take dance classes with Chuck Kelly at Broadway Dance Center and different people. And my mom would get me privates as well. And then I ended up even studying with the School of American Ballet. So what would happen is I would go home. I would come to New York, and my training would go into hyperdrive.
Yeah.
For the summer. And then I would come back to Kentucky, and it would be like I had a leg up a little, literally a leg up. And so then I started doing competition stuff at home in Kentucky during the school year, and meaning like dance competitions.
How did you get to Radio City at 9?
So the summer I was 9, we were there. This is one of those same stories. There was an audition for the little girl in the show, and they wanted an 11-year-old. Yeah. And no agent would send me in for this. And my mom was like, well, there is nothing that an 11-year-old can do that she can't do. Well, there was. I wasn't on point, and they wanted a girl on point, but so I went in, and this one agent got me in. And at the time, I say this because normally people just have one agent. Yeah. But at the time, I was freelancing. I think I had a manager, and you could freelance between agent. It was like, which agent called you first is the agent that got in, And so, but nobody was interested in sending me in, except for, I guess it was J&J or something. My mom had convinced somebody. And I go in, and we get there, and my name is not even on the list. Yeah. My name's not on the list. And so my mom was like, and they said, well, how old is she? And she's like, 9. I said, well, we'll get her in, ma'am. So I'm waiting around, and we're just sitting in this room with a bunch of kids, and I go in and I sing my song, which is "You Gotta Have Heart" from Damn Yankees. And I did a monologue about violets. Violets. I don't even remember. That's all I remember. And they came back and they said, is Laura Bell Bundy's mom here? And she said, yes. And they said, we would like to have her come back again, whatever. So I got a call back, and then I ended up getting this part. And of course, that put fuel in my mother's fire about being right about these types of things. And the musical director for the show that year, who was putting together all of the new sort of Christmas arrangements, was Marvin Laird. Yep. And Marvin was the composer of Ruthless. And that's how I got involved doing Ruthless. And in the first audition before the callback, Marvin ran out to say, hey, I've been looking for a little girl just like this. She might not get this part, but could you please call me? So that began from that audition that nobody wanted to send me in on the rest of my life.
Oh, this is crazy, because I remember you coming to our Broadway Beat studio on 43rd Street between 8th and 9th, and you sat on the little black and gray comfortable chair. I'll never forget this. That's the first time I met you. It was so great. Our favorite memory of doing Ruthless for you is what, Laura Bell?
Oh, I had lots of great memories. I mean, I loved doing that show. I loved being in the Village. And it's so funny because, I was 10, 11 years old and down on McDougal Street. Yeah. And I just walked around. I would just leave the theater and go to the Minetta Tavern next door and sit at the bar and be like, I'll have the usual. And I'm 10. And I go back and do my show. And it was just crazy. So I have great memories of being in that area. And at one point, Britney Spears was my understudy, and Natalie Portman was my understudy. But Natalie and I really became friends, so we did that together. We would go down the street by ourselves and get food at 11. And but I have hilarious memories. You know, there was one time Joel Vig, he played Sylvia St. Croix, and he wore so many pantyhose, okay, you know, to cover up the hair on his legs. And I think he wore like 4 or 5 pairs of pantyhose. I don't know, it was a lot of pantyhose. And once his skirt broke off in the back, and he couldn't feel that it was sliding down. And I'm on stage, and now I'm a kid. I can't, you know, it was like, and even as an adult, I have a hard time not breaking.
Yeah.
But I was like, seeing his skirt. He was singing a song. It was called Talent, You've Got Talent. And there was a line. I mean, at this point, he didn't realize his skirt was like almost to his knees. And he said, you don't have to get undressed if you've got talent. And the audience was roaring, and he didn't understand. He just thought he was having a good night. And he went to take a walk and realized, and at that point, I was lost. So I always think about that story because I never laughed so hard. It was so hard. I had to turn away.
Oh,
I was shaking.
I still love you going to the Minetta Lane Tavern, saying, I'll have my usual, which whatever it was at that time. So then you made your Broadway debut, of course, as Amber in Hairspray. I mean, talk about memories. I mean, I still vividly remember seeing that show for the first time. Favorite memory, how much fun was that doing Hairspray and playing that role and being a part of that show?
It was just amazing. I started with Hairspray. I did the very first reading of the show in, I want to say it was 2000. I was 19.
Wow.
And, you know, from Ruthless, like I was really good at being the bitch. So I just, you know, at that point we didn't have a second act, but I think I Know Where I've Been was written. And Harvey was involved, and Marissa was involved, Dick Latessa was involved, Linda Hart was involved, Jen Gambatese, I believe, Katie Leonard. There was a lot of people that ended up continuing on. And then there was another reading that I couldn't do because I was doing Guiding Light at the time, and I couldn't get out. But I did the other 2 readings. There was like 4 total readings. So I did the rest of them. And then we had this thing go, and it was just crazy. And I think we just had a feeling. The music was so infectious, and it made you feel so good. And the message was so right on. And it had that perfect blend of heart and comedy, heart and bite, and fight and exuberance, and, you know, and enthusiasm. It was just all of it. And I think we all felt that. And for a lot of the cast, since we were all playing teenagers, really, or the younger cast, this was also a lot of people's very first Broadway show. And I remember saying, like, I know this is technically my first Broadway show. I really don't think it's going to get better than this.
Yeah.
It was kind of like starting at Radio City Music Hall. You can only go down from there.
Totally.
You know, I was like, I've peaked at this, you know, and we knew it. We just had a feeling. And that cast really, you know, really tight, like a family.
Just brilliant. You know, then you stood by for the role of Glinda in that musical phenomenon, Wicked, for both Kristen Chenoweth and Jennifer Laura Thompson. Do you remember the first time you went on stage as Glinda and were in the bubble?
Yes. So I was a standby.
Yeah.
And there was something called the 5-block radius, so I could be in the 5-block radius. But actually, I was on my dinner break. So it was between shows. I want to say it was either a Saturday or Wednesday. I think it was a Saturday. I was at H&M checking out. It was 7 o'clock. It was 7:30, half hour. So I was like checking out. I was going back to the theater, and I get a call that says, you know, hey, Laura Bell, where are you? You're on tonight. Kristen isn't feeling well. And I was like, oh my God. And I had just been hired too. Like I was only like employed for 4 weeks. And so I ran back and it was just crazy. And they put me in the bubble right away. Just, okay, we're going to get the technical stuff. And I think that I want to say that because I hadn't been there that long, I hadn't really gone through all the backstage stuff. I definitely did something where I was trailing her, but I'm not sure I had been in the bubble.
Yeah.
And so it was small, because she's small.
Yeah.
And so I had to bend my knees in that. And you're singing those operatic notes, those aren't easy bending your knees. It was little. So it was weird. And, I just remember coming down and I was like, oh my God, I'm in a bubble. And that's all I could think about. I'm in a bubble. I'm high above everybody else. The lights are blinding me. I don't think people realize how intense those lights are.
Yeah.
And when you've been rehearsing on stage without those lights, it's like that's a totally other element.
Yeah.
That you're dealing with. You have someone is driving with brights.
Yeah.
It's like that. It's so intense. So I just remember having a completely out of body experience. I have no idea what happened. The only thing that I was thinking was, holy crap, I'm in a bubble. Am I afraid of heights? Am I going to fall off this? I can't see anything. Where am I? Who am I? I should probably bend down a little bit. Can people see my face? I have no idea what else happened. And then the other thing is this is what happens when you are covering someone, if you're an understudy or a standby. You can rehearse all you want, but until you have like a real put-in with everybody, you're probably standing in the wrong place.
Yeah.
So just the whole night, that like gentle lower back, like everybody was just kind of pushing me to the spot that I needed to go to. They were so sweet. I mean, they're just so kind, because they do their show over and over and they're like, oh my God, this girl doesn't know where she's going.
I love that.
But also I also have just so much respect for anybody who does any kind of understudying or standby jobs, because that's the hardest job I ever had to do, for sure.
Well, like I said, I had seen you in the show because I like to go and see standbys in the show. You were phenomenal. You were one of my favorite Glindas. It was great. I didn't see your first performance, but like I said,
that's probably a good thing.
Totally. Then you returned to Broadway when both critics and audiences alike fell in love with you all over again as Elle Woods in Legally Blonde. That has got to be like such an incredible highlight of your career. I mean, just being in the theater it was like a rock show of the audience just freaking out from the downbeat of that overture and everything else. What was Legally Blonde like for you?
It was all encompassing. It was just my whole life. I mean, I couldn't really do anything else, and I didn't want to do anything else. I loved doing that show, and I felt very connected to Elle as a person. Yeah. You said I think with a glass half full, and so does Elle. So we had some similar things in common, and energetically very similar as well. I just loved doing the show. I loved my cast. We had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
You could tell we were having fun. This was a group of people who really enjoyed working together. And we're still, to this day, we have like a text thread. We send each other, messages and memes and fun stuff. And I mean, I just love that group of people, and I loved that character and the music. It was a perfect fit for me.
Yeah. You're also known to a whole new legion of fans, of course, from your work on television. You've done so much television and film. Did you grasp that process right away? Was it because you had done Guiding Light that you grasped the whole TV thing?
Yeah. I mean, when I was younger, when I was doing Ruthless, I had done a few movies. I did Huck Finn and Life with Mikey. And then I did Jumanji, the first Jumanji, when I was in high school. And then I also did a couple pilots that never saw the light of day. And that was TV, And so I was kind of dipping my toe in, but I wasn't becoming, well known by any means. And Guiding Light for sure was a great training ground for me. Oh my God. You go to work, you do a soap opera, you have like 20 pages of lines a day. You're having all these crazy things happen to you, like you're kidnapped, or, your mom is blind, or, your parents are divorcing, or whatever. It's always, you have a nervous breakdown. It's always these different things, like you come back to life, whatever. And so it was like going to an acting class. It was like a paid acting class. And I worked with some of these incredible people like Kim Zimmer and Robert Newman, who really, really taught me something that I think was probably the most valuable thing when it came to TV and film.
Yeah.
We would have this, there was a hallway. There was all these dressing rooms, and people would come out to the hallway, and there was a couch there. And right before the scenes that you were taping, people would run their lines, but people also would just hang out in the hallway.
Yeah.
And I remember coming out once and listening to the woman who played my mom, Kim Zimmer, and she was having a conversation with another actor. And I could not tell whether she was doing lines or whether she was just having a conversation. And I was like, that's what it means to be a good actor.
Yeah.
I can't tell if you're acting. And that was it for me. It was like, that was like a light that went off for me, especially when it comes to the TV element, to become a believable human being that doesn't appear as if they're acting, because there's something that's unreal about that. And I definitely think that I've taken that, and also a lot of things about vulnerability I learned from Kim that I think I took into my other work. Like even when I did Wicked, and definitely when I did Legally Blonde, finding that small, quiet, vulnerable place, and then growing that and making that bigger for a theatrical audience, but always starting on the inside.
Yeah.
And then when you just do TV and film, you just sort of adjust to the tone of whatever it is. It's always a confusing thing to figure out what the heck the tone is.
I can't believe this. This hour is just about up. I could sit with you forever, just so you know. I love the early stories. I knew how you started, but I didn't realize the whole backstory with your mom is absolutely hilarious. One of my final questions
I have more stories. So.
Oh, don't worry. We're going to do this again. We're going to do a part 2 of this. Don't you worry. How has being a mom changed the way you look at your career and your life?
Oh, a lot, actually. In so many ways. My time that I get with my son is so important to me. And I see him growing so fast and changing so quickly. And I've already even had these moments where I go, oh my God, he's a toddler. He's walking around, he's saying things. What happened to the baby?
Yeah.
Oh, I missed that. I already lost it. And so it's making me sort of reevaluate how I spend my time.
Yeah.
I don't want to spend my time on a project that doesn't provide an energy for me and sustain me. I don't want to work on things that drain me. I mean, we got to make the money. We all got to make the money. We got to do things we don't want to do.
Yeah.
And we do that for our kids and our family. But it just makes me more precious with my time. And it makes me think, like, I got sent out this movie request, basically a porno. Yeah, she sang country music, but great director. And I'm like,
yeah.
I don't know how, listen, I don't know how I would feel if my son seeing me do all that, So there's those types of things, like what kind of work do I want him to see me do?
Yeah.
And how do I want him to remember who his mom was? And like some of the stuff that I'm doing right now, which is mission oriented,
yeah,
I'm proud of. And I want him to know about women and their history and their plight and what's powerful about them innately. And so I'm happy for him to just kind of be a fly on the wall. He heard, I mean, he was inside of me, you know. Here's the thing that's so crazy, Richard. I'm doing this album about women, and at this simultaneously, I was creating a man inside of my body.
That's terrific. Like I said,
Insane.
totally. And now look, like I said, our hour is up. I've had the best hour with you. I have known you, like I said, I vividly see you sitting at 10 years old.
I remember that.
A block from where I am on that white and black chair in your beautiful little dress. And I've watched you grow creatively and turn into the incredible woman that you are and what you stand for and everything else. You've always been so sweet and just so talented. And this has been so great to catch up with you. The new album is stunning. Women of Tomorrow. Is there an actual date for the actual album?
I think it's
Okay.
I think it's gonna be May.
Okay.
We have another song coming out on Equal Pay Day. It's called Money Ho.
Good. I love it.
And then I think the whole album is around Mother's Day.
Oh, perfect. Like I said, you have planned this so beautifully. Like I said, anybody out there, just type in laurabellbundy.com or anything, or Women of Tomorrow. The videos and the songs are so wonderful, except for being not just only entertaining, but you learn so much of you know, the stories you have told behind these songs. So like I said, I adore you. I cannot wait to hold you, like just to hug you again on a carpet, to just see you. And I'm glad you're closer to New York right now, which is really great because we're going to get you back on stage again. Everybody, until we see you, stay safe, and we'll see you really soon. Laura, I love you.
You too.